Hey everyone, what's happening? I'm Adam, this is Go To Outdoors, and thank you again for coming back to another one. Today I am very excited because I'm finally getting to make something that I've been talking about in my last couple of videos, and that is a variation on an old family recipe that I have of venison kielbasa. So today we're going to be getting the mix together, we're going to be grinding it, we're going to be mixing it, and then we're going to be stuffing the sausage casings, the natural hog casings that I use. And yeah, so let's just go ahead and get into it. So first thing you obviously need if you're going to be making kielbasa or sausage or anything else like that is meat. And today I've got about 5.5 pounds of venison from the deer I harvested recently, and I also have about 12.5 pounds of pork shoulder butt. So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now. So of course right here we do have the venison. It was originally frozen and it's thawed out again. I've been thawing it for about 3 days now in the refrigerator. So yeah, there's a little bit of fluid coming out of there, but it's entirely normal. That's perfectly okay. So yes, about 5.5 pounds in each of those two packages, because that's how I package it up. And here is the pork shoulder butt. Managed to actually get this at the local Costco, and the price I could not argue with was only $1.99 a pound. And I'm not entirely sure if you're familiar with that, but that price is ridiculously good. So I kind of had to tumble a couple things in their freezer box to see what was here, but found this for $1.99 a pound. Other stuff they had was $2.29 a pound, so it could vary based on your local supermarket or wherever you happen to get your meat. Just go to the meat counter at your local grocery store, or if you have a local butcher, that's even better. They can probably even debone it. That's one thing I will say about this. What made this price so good is it's a pork shoulder butt, which is a shoulder obviously that's already been deboned, so I don't have to mess with that at all. This is just straight up chop it, cube it, throw it into the mix. So why don't we start that? Alright, if you're going to be preparing something for preservation or smoking in this case, as I'm doing, it doesn't hurt to have gloves on. Probably not a bad idea to wear gloves if you're preparing some kind of meat anyway, but it's just something I do. It's a cleanliness thing. Easier to clean up in the end. So let's go ahead and we're going to start with the pork shoulder butt because there's more of it, so it'll be easier to cut up and just get out of the way. Ah, they actually split it down the middle. That's how they got it boneless. They cheated. Put one section aside so we can work with this one here. And yep, already boned out, good to go. And I will mention in one thing, you don't want to actually get rid of any of the fat. The whole reason I'm adding pork to my kielbasa with the venison is because the venison is so lean it won't stick together. So we need to have that pork in there as a bit of a binder. Doesn't need to be fancy. Again, it's all going through the grinder, so just start breaking it down. You'll see right there we got a lot of that good fat in between here. That's why I use pork shoulder butt if you can get it, because that's going to help you get the most benefit, bang for your buck, out of your grind. Real quick, switching to a better knife for this. Carving knife isn't going through quite as fast as I want to, so let's use a fillet knife, see if that's any better. Oh yeah, much better. And you're going to want little pieces about like that. I cube it down to about that size before I run it through the grinder, so then you put it aside. Okay, so that is the pork finished up. Now we're going to be getting on to the venison. Let's get it into the same bowl. Just dump it out. And like I was mentioning before, the venison was previously frozen. After I butchered it out and cleaned it, just to kind of keep everything as fresh as possible, I wasn't 100% sure when I'd be getting around to making my kielbasa, so it's not going to hurt anything. Works great with fresh, works great with previously frozen, doesn't matter. Now, same thing as the pork, you just start taking it apart and cubing it. It's all going to go into the same bin. And if you see any hairs, get rid of them now. You do not want those ending up in the final mix. Okay, one thing I will mention real quick is there's still a lot of connective tissue that I left on the venison when I was taking it apart. It's all going to go in the grind. It's not really that big a deal. It's not super important like if you were making a roast or if you were making a steak or something like that to get rid of all of it. You're still just going to be going through and doing the regular cubing like you would on the pork, and it's all going to go into the same mix, so just keep tossing it in. Okay, so we're finally done cutting everything up, and it's all in the bag, so let me wash these real quick and then I'm going to show you what it looks like. Alrighty, and this is what we have to work with. This is our 23 pounds of meat. Getting it ready to go here. But obviously, cut the pork first, and it was on the bottom. So what I'm going to be doing now... Hi, girls. You're not getting into that. Stop it. Anyway, back to the meat. So here is the 23 pounds of meat that we have. And so because the pork is on the bottom and the venison's on the top, what I'm going to do is just reach in here and give it a bit of a stir, because when you are... I'm not getting that. Anyway, so because the pork was on the bottom, I'm going to be giving it a stir just to make sure everything's a little bit more, kind of mixed together, divided evenly as I'm putting it through the grinder, which of course is the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and stir this around right quick. Don't be afraid to get elbow deep on this. Sausage making, kielbasa making, not a pretty process, but the final result is 120% worth it. So the pork and the venison is now mixed up, and that's kind of what you want it to look like before you get to the next step, which again is the grinding process. So be right back. Let me get a couple things swapped around, and I will put the mixer here that has my grinder attachment and everything else, and I'll be right back. Okay, so fresh pair of gloves on because we have moved everything into place, and now it is time to get grinding. And let's start with the meat. All right, so we've got a good chunk of this already ground up. Let's go take a look and see what's actually happening. So under here, you can definitely see this is the kind of coarse grind that we're looking for. Nothing too fine. I want a bit of bite to whatever I'm making with my kielbasa. So that's how we're going to do it. Get all these little bits and pieces off of me back in there. And so far that's looking good. So what we're going to do is continue with this. I'm going to keep grinding through the rest of it because that's probably, I said a third, that's probably only about a quarter of the total meat. So we're going to have plenty to work with on the next step after this. So get it all back in the bowl and let's keep grinding. Okay, so everything's ground and this looks pretty much exactly like I wanted it to. Open this up, pop the cap off, knock a little bit extra into the pan here. But that's basically what we have. If you want to zoom in over here on the other camera, just 23 pounds of ground meat. Okay, so we are back and ready to start adding our spices into the ground meat itself. So before we go ahead and actually add any spices, you're going to want to make sure you have some water added to it. So what I have actually in this right here is a little over a quart, a little over 4 cups of water. For about every 20 pounds, that's what you want. I have a little bit over because I've got about 23 pounds of meat in total. So let's go ahead and just add that right in, get that over with first. Okay, so we don't need this anymore. Okay, so the water is going to do a couple things for us. The first thing it's going to do, of course, is add some moisture. That moisture is something we're going to need once it's actually in the sausage casings, because once we then put it into the smoker, it's going to start losing water at a very rapid pace. But it's also exactly what you want to have happen. So the second thing that water is going to do for us is help emulsify some of the other dry ingredients that we're going to be putting in. Okay, and into the wet ingredients, being the water and the meat, I'm going to be adding these dry ingredients. The dry ingredients include more than you might think, but it's a lot less than what it looks like. So, main part of this concoction here is actually 4 cups of Moo-Pow, cow powdered milk. Very important. It acts as a bit of a binder, keeps things together for you. The second thing in here is going to be about 6 tablespoons of salt. I just use sea salt. You can use kosher salt. You can use a little bit more. If you want to use cured, you can use things like that. Not really that important. I also have about 1.5 tablespoons of black pepper, and I have 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. And if you're wondering if you want to kind of substitute garlic powder for actual cloves of garlic, 1 clove of garlic equals about 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder. So it kind of evens out. I just use garlic powder because it's easy, stores better, and it's less to work with when you want to make it. So slowly we're going to start adding these ingredients into the mix that we have here. So let's swap over to the other camera and kind of give you a bird's eye view of how we're going to be doing that. Okay, before we start mixing anything else, just get in there with your hands, and again, wear gloves. It helps you keep things clean, and it helps you clean up easier later. And try and incorporate as much of that water as you can into the majority of the meat that you have here. Again, that's going to help things break down and kind of emulsify a little bit better. It's also shockingly satisfying. I feel like a kid playing with Play-Doh or modeling clay or something again. Just going to bring it around. There's a bit that hasn't been mixed yet. Just spread it out, just keep moving it around. And then slowly but surely start adding in those dry spices. Get a layer on there. And just start incorporating it. This is not a quick process, but it's something you can go ahead and take care of because it's got to be done anyway, and it's got to be done right. You don't want to have one part of your sausage that's completely overpoweringly seasoned and then something else that's bland as all get out. So take your time and do this right. Again, it's far more satisfying than it should be. Just getting in here and playing around with your hands. Starting to smell like sausage. Add in another layer. Rinse and repeat. And if it starts to clump up, just get in there and break it up with your hands. Section over here is a little overspiced, so we'll rework that a little bit. Go in another pocket. Got to break up those pockets. And try not to send meat flying everywhere. Last ingredient, the last addition, the rest of the dry ingredients we'll put in this part. So that's that. Now one final mix. And if you feel like you need to add a little bit more water in here at this point, don't worry about it. Go ahead and do it, because again, it's all going to be fine in the end when you put it into the casings. If it starts to look like it's getting a little bit gummy, that's also not a bad thing. Except it does tend to stick to you a bit more once you work it and it warms up a little bit. But that's okay. It can all come right back out again. Okay, everything's mixed in, everything is incorporated. Now you can see it is completely mixed up, it is sitting, it's ready to go, with the exception of one or two things. First thing we're going to do is, of course, get as much off of your gloves as you can, put it back in there because you don't want to lose any of this tasty goodness. Second thing you're going to do is you're going to take a little bit and you're going to want to cook it off in a frying pan or something, because you're going to want to make sure it tastes the right way, kind of the way you want it to taste before you put it into the smoker, because this is really your only step where you can start adding flavor. Obviously you can't take any flavor out, so if you put too much salt in at this point, put too much pepper, too much garlic, and you don't like it, sorry to say, but tough. It kind of is what it is at this point. So what I'm going to do is take these gloves off, clean a couple things around, and bring you back with a frying pan and see what this first little bit tastes like. And we're back with one of these, because now we need to go ahead and cook some of this off. Get that started. One moment. Can't hurt to use a little bit of this when you're first testing it out, right? Okay, now we're ready to pick our little bit out that we're going to be actually testing. So what we're going to do is probably get a little wad. Probably about a tiny meatball's worth of sausage here of kielbasa. I'm going to go ahead and just pop that right into the pan. And again, remember when you're testing this, when you're cooking off your little piece, you're going to want to go completely well done with it, because there is pork in here and just be on the safe side. The dog's attention span has gone from bad to worse because it has gone from them smelling meat to cooked meat. And right now this smells like cooked breakfast meat. Of course, dogs love bacon, as we all know. They're not getting any of this. This one's all for me. That's probably cooked a little bit hotter than I would have liked, but hey, you know what? Let's just break it up and finish it off quick, because there's still a little bit of raw pork in the center there. Okay, so we have our test subject cooked up and ready to go. And not bad. Could probably use a tad more salt. Yeah. It needs more salt and it needs more pepper, so yeah. We'll be back. We're going to add those, we're going to remix it and do another test, so one moment. Okay, spice bowl is in the works again, and this time I've added a little bit more. Obviously, don't need any more of the powdered milk. Moo-Pow, squared away the way it is. I did add another 5 tablespoons of salt. I added probably another tablespoon worth of garlic, and I added another heaping tablespoon of black pepper. So let's give this a quick mix. Make sure that's all incorporated. Grab myself yet another pair of gloves. Now that that's mixed up, keeping one glove on because I don't want to get too sticky again. Let's go ahead and cook off another piece. And again, another little meatball sized piece. Get that on that pan. And spread it out. I'm going to spread it out flatter. Doesn't affect the taste, just helps it cook faster. This is a very kind of test and see procedure. Just because whenever you're actually cooking something with this kind of volume of meat, and a little bit of spice kind of goes a long way, but because you're never exactly using the exact same amount of meat every single time, you got to fiddle with it a little bit. I've actually adapted this recipe up from a recipe that was actually meant for about 5 pounds of meat, and compared it to another one I found that was actually another family recipe that was a bit different, but that one was based on 20 pounds of meat. It was actually based with pork and beef instead of pork and venison. So the flavor of the meat's going to affect how everything tastes when you put it into there, so just fiddle with it until you get something you like. But that's why we do these little test cooks until you have it where you want it. Get out of there. That's the flavor I was shooting for. It's greasy. It's all that pork fat in there, but it's delicious. So, I'm now happy with the way this turned out. This is what I'm willing to put into some sausage casings and then put into the smoker when it comes to that. But before I do that, I kind of want to give these flavors time to mellow, time to come together. So what I'm going to do is portion it out, and it's going to go into the refrigerator overnight. So I'm going to go ahead and get that taken care of. And the next time you see me, I'm actually going to be having it back out and going to be in the process of getting ready to put it into those casings. So I'll be back. It is officially the next day, and I am back to do the stuffing part of it. You'll see that this already has something in here because I had to do a test one first to make sure it came out looking edible. So the first one I made is done, and that is your plain old vanilla family recipe Polish kielbasa link. I'm using butcher's twine at the top as well as just having it tied off, and I'll get you a zoom in on that once I get a couple more of these done, but as a first one, hey, that ain't bad. So let's zoom in on the other camera here and we'll get a closer look at what I'm doing here. Okay, so the first thing we did here was actually get the hog casing, the natural hog casing, which I'm using. Once you get them all cleaned up, you got to rinse them off, you got to flush a little bit of the salt out of the inside of them and make sure they're wet. So you got to soak those for about 10 minutes or so in lukewarm water after you rinse them, just to make sure they're good and pliable before you try and put them onto the feeder pipe on the sausage stuffer. So up here, of course, we have it on there now, and this is actually 2 of those casings. I just threaded it on and pretty much tie off the ends. Make sure you tie off the ends, and I did put a little bit more butcher's twine on here in addition to putting a knot in the hog casing itself. So now we just go ahead and get to stuffing. Okay, now that the casing's on, everything's ready to go. You just grab yourself a wad of meat, pop it in the hopper, start your stuffer, and get the process going. Not the fastest process, so make sure you're patient with it. And be aware, this is the first time I've used this kind of stuffer, so I'm experimenting the entire time. I used to use an old stuffing press, which I can tell you right now I'm probably going to be going back to after this batch. Just make sure you're patient with it. You don't want to rush it because you don't want to have a blowout on your sausage casing. And yes, that's as awkward as it sounds. Okay, now we're at the end of this one. This one's just going to be a little bit of a baby link. So, get to the end. This is, again, this one's going to be a small link. So, go ahead and twist it off a little bit. You're going to want to throw a knot into the end. Not the easiest with greasy gloves on, but you will find a way. It's probably also a good idea to have somebody out here helping you do this process because, as you can see, it's a little awkward doing it by yourself. But it is what it is. So we're going to go ahead and get this taken care of. And once I get a knot and get a piece of string on here, I'll show you what that looks like up close. And like I said, this one just made a little link with what was left on that first casing. So just a small breakfast portion of kielbasa. Yeah, I got it tied up. I tied both the casing itself and I used some butcher's twine to keep it all together. And these are just going to be hanging on those dowel rods in the smoker that I was mentioning in that video. And it's going to be just another part of the process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the rest of this stuff prepped because sausage making isn't glamorous or quick. So I'm going to get this taken care of, and that's kind of what I got for you right now. I'll bring you back when everything's done, show you how much I've got, and then we're going to move on to the portion where we go ahead and smoke this off. So we shall return. Okay, hard part is done. Sausage is in the casing. So let me just go ahead and spin you around and we'll see what this looks like right before we hop down and bring it down to the smoker. Actually, we might wait to bring it down to the smoker because it's a little warm out, and yeah, we want the temperatures to drop before we go ahead and put it in there because this is a long, low, slow smoke. So anyway, let's get a look at the kielbasa real quick. Okay, there we go. Filled up most of a tub, and yeah, I'd say we did pretty good. They're all linked up. We got them tied off with that twine. So now we just have to bring it down to the smoker, thread them onto the dowel rods, and get them in there. Okay. Obviously, you can see, waited until later for temperatures to drop quite a bit. It is a gorgeous night, as you can see from the moon right there. I mean, it's a gorgeous night. It's probably mid-50s right now, mid to high 50s. But everything is on the smoker. Of course, we're operating with flashlights right now, so let's go ahead and spin you around and see what the setup looks like now that the meat is actually on the dowel rods and in the smoker. I will add that I did have to add a rack because there were some shorter pieces. Had to tie off, had a couple blowouts in the sausage casings while I was actually putting it all together. So anyway, let's get a look at what this looks like. So right here, got the meat. That's what the first batch, that's what that looks like. Everything's good to go there. Got the heat coming in. Obviously you can see the smoke wafting across the camera. And I will say, did add in right there, zoom in, that is a thermometer probe that I'm going to use to keep an eye on the temperatures. Obviously it's really low right now. Where we're going to want it is right about here at about the 180 to 200 degree mark throughout the entire cook. But for right now, the only thing I have left to do is actually get the lid on this bad boy, and then I just have to tend the fire for a few hours. It's only about 5:30-ish right now, maybe 5:45, and I don't really mind because I got until midnight and it's a gorgeous night. So let's get the next step going. Ha-ha! And alley-oop. All right, quick update. You'll see right here, we'll zoom you in. We have reached the desired temperature, about 180 degrees. That's where we're going to try and keep it for the next 4 hours or so. Again, like I said, this is a low, cold smoke because that's the only way to get this exactly the way it should be. Can't believe it's working. Actually, I can believe it's working. I'm really happy that it's working. Prototype design, it's not so bad. Okay, and obviously down from the smoker we got the fire pit. Let's take a look at what we've got going on here, because it's kind of a mishmash too, but it's working. It's doing the trick. Let's flip you around again. So as you can see, because of the direction the wind is coming, I had to take a couple bricks off this side of the fire pit and kind of mount it up over there just to block some of the wind. And of course, to direct that heat, like I said, that was what I was worried about. Yeah, snow shovel works just fine. It's an old snow shovel. We're going to replace it anyway, so it's made out of iron. It shouldn't burn like aluminum wood. Okay, it's update time. It is currently 8:54. Maybe you can see that, maybe you can't. There you go. It's blurry, sorry. But the temperature is looking mighty fine. Been holding pretty steady right about 180, where it should be. And I think it's time to actually get a look at what the meat's looking like, because it's been a couple hours already. And oh yeah, that's starting to look real good. Starting to get that color that we want. Make sure you center that lid back on there. Keep the temperature right where you need it to be. So what I'm looking for at this point is to get that, you know, kind of reddish, like dark mahogany color, as well as starting to see a little bit of like shrinkage, almost like crinkliness, shriveling of the casing around the meat itself. So it's been in there obviously for a couple hours, and the slow smoking is just working perfectly. Still have a few more hours to go though, and I can't complain. This is working out exactly as I'd hoped. This new smoke box is pretty cool. But now I just gotta wait again. Okay, it is final update time for the cook itself, the smoking time itself. It is currently 11:02. Let's get you zoomed in there, 11:02. So I have been at this for 5.5 hours, and that's kind of what this process takes. This is a low, slow cooking method. You can see the temperature here is still hovering right around that 180 degree mark. And it's been right around that for the whole time. There's been a lot of fire management, you know, because again, the fire pit that I have here, it's pretty simple. It's that snow shovel kind of directing the heat into the pipe, and that pipe, of course, bringing the heat into the big gigantic smoke box that I have here. And it's really looking good. It's been perfect. I mean, it's been worth the effort. Is it the ideal method? Who knows? But this is the method that my family has used for several generations, and it turns out really, really good. So why don't we go ahead and take a peek at this now? Okay, let's zoom in on that. Let's get a good look at there. You can see the skins on those kielbasas are now starting to get a little bit of that crinkle factor, and of course they have that beautiful red, smoky, wouldn't call it mahogany, but I'd call it a nice smoky color. And that is exactly what you're looking for in this particular cooking method. Low and slow is the way to go. I'm crying, I got smoke in my eyes. I'm just so happy. But yeah, so we're right about at the end of the cook period here. Gonna be hanging around for a couple more minutes. I'm probably going to take some time, probably in another about 5 or 10 minutes. I'm one of the smaller links I've got up here, probably that big fat one in the front there. I am going to be bringing that out, and I'm going to slice that in half. I really want to make sure that it's smoked all the way through, cooked all the way through, so when I get to that point, you're going to see what I see firsthand. I'm so excited. Moment of truth. I just smoked myself. Okay, let's reach into this bad boy. We're going to grab the big link here. And yes, it's hot. I've been cooking it. Okay, let's bring in a bit. All right, so this is what we are now. Let's close that up so I don't smoke myself so bad. And this is, of course, what we're working with. This is one of the smaller links. Of course, this one was sitting on a rack. It wasn't hanging on the dowel rod, so the moment of truth has arrived. Right down the middle. Let's give us cut. Oh, would you look at that. That is perfect. You talk about a smoke ring. Oh, this smells. Oh, I wish you could smell this. Give that a whiff. Give that a whiff. Oh man, I wish you could smell that. Let's cut through a couple little places here. I tell you what, you hear people on TV and everything. You hear pit masters talk about a smoke ring. Let's zoom in on. Let's focus on that. Let's get me out of here. Focus on that. How's that for a smoke ring? Everything but the very center there. Beautiful pink smoky color. And I did not use any curing salts in this. This was just regular sea salt. I didn't even use kosher salt, but that is about as good as it could possibly get. I can't even tell you how good this smells. I think it's safe enough to try. How about you? Yeah, let's do this. Okay. Here's a bite of the first Polish kielbasa I have made in probably 15 years. Oh. That is absolutely perfect. Got a nice crunch on the skin there, on the casing, on the hog casing. Wonderful smoke. Oh, I can't even tell you how good that is. That is my holiday treat right there. I'm gonna enjoy a little bit more of this, and I'll meet you inside. Okay, I am in the house again, and let's get you another look at that smoke ring now that I have a little bit better light. But yeah, there. That is a smoke ring, baby. It does not get any better than that. At all. Family recipe, family style of cooking it. Nailed it. I'm gonna get the rest of these links taken off and kind of show you how much I actually ended up with here. Okay, so we are back in the kitchen, and I do have all the kielbasa in front of me, but you might notice it is the next day. It was so late last night, I just didn't have time to let everything cool and then pack it then, so I popped everything into the refrigerator, chilled it out, and now it's all ready to go. But it is looking really, really good. It's smelling even better. So let's just get you down here and take a look at it. And this is what we are working with. Pounds and pounds, a little tub full of smoked meats. Oh yeah, that's looking real good. See, put it in the refrigerator and it chills out a little bit more, crinkles up a little bit more, but that is exactly what you want. That's perfect. And really the only thing left to do now is actually put it into vacuum bags and pack it in the freezer, because it is now good to go. Once it's packed up, this will actually keep for over a year if you have it, frozen properly in a vacuum seal bag. If you're going to leave it out, I would suggest using it within about a week. It's well preserved at this point. It's smoked. It's going to hold on its own for a while, but if you're not going to have it immediately, go ahead and put it into freezer bags or vacuum pack it and put it in the freezer, because the smoke smell is very, very powerful off this stuff. That was the whole point of the procedure that we did yesterday, smoking it. But it's really great stuff. Thank you again for watching this video. I'm going to go ahead and get these in the freezer bags behind me. And that's really all I got for you today. So, like I always say, thanks again for watching. Make sure you find a reason to smile today, like smoked meats. And I'll catch you in the next one.